Thank you so much. All right, well, welcome everybody. This is Irrational Labs open event for the month of October. Most of the members know that we have closed members only events during each month, but this is the exciting, invite your friends, come get enlightened, hear from the coolest people, coolest companies, podcasters, authors, you name it. So no pressure, Shea and Mimi, but you are the coolest. Today is going to be about how PadSplit simplified its billing and gave its team 350 plus hours a month back. They're going to tell us how they reduce friction using behavioral design, and Mimi and Shea are going to blow your minds. That said, commercial, as people come in, we do have a new finance boot camp. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you've been wondering, how do I use my money well? You need to learn behavioral design clearly with Irrational Labs, clearly at this link, which I will shortly put in the chat. But yeah, we did launch the finance vertical. We have our general behavioral design course that a lot of you have taken. We have a health vertical, and we now have the finance vertical. It is exciting. You are exciting. Using money better is exciting. Because we have three options. We have self-paced boot camps in health and finance. And this gives you access to all kinds of proprietary frameworks, downloadable articles, and key psychologies. Commercial complete. Let me talk about our speakers today. You are in for a treat. If you don't know about PadSplit, it's a very, very interesting startup. That's the beginning of their talk, so I don't want to give it away. But it has to do with splitting pads, I'm just saying, and not notepads. So this is the moment of truth, Mimi. Here I go. Chunyon, Mimi Kim. Did I get it right, Mimi?
Close enough. Yeah.
No,
Good enough.
no, do it right.
Tongyeon.
Chunyon.
Yeah.
Okay. Chunyon, Mimi Kim, is currently the head of product at PadSplit and presented a pronunciation challenge for me this morning. Even though we've talked a bunch, but in her product journey, she's learned many things that are in conflict. The validity of an idea that often depends on timing, that an MVP should deliver on user delight and business needs, and that users' trust is difficult to gain, but easy, ladies and gentlemen, easy to lose. However, the quickest way to learn is to release. She loves end user facing products, and in her previous life was a trained architect, which gives her an eye for detail and beautiful interiors. She also, her master's is in architecture from a place in Boston called Harvard. You may have heard about it. She didn't put it on her bio, but it's a fact. She's passionate about building teams, just like she was about buildings and processes. The latter is the key to scaling them and bringing out their best qualities. Her aspiration is always to build what she can be proud of, whatever it is, buildings, digital products, or teams. And speaking of teams, I think maybe, possibly, she's proud of having Shea on her team. He is a behavioral product manager at PadSplit, and he's a fellow here at Irrational Labs. So he collaborates with us. You may have gotten feedback from him on your bootcamp assignments. He's a brilliant dude who's used behavioral design and experimentation to guide key product decisions for different tech challenges at PadSplit related to financials, co-living, and property management. Previously, he participated in the prestigious Venture for America Fellowship, where he worked in data analytics at a fintech startup in Baltimore. His bachelor is in economics and mathematics from Emory, and he's currently a graduate student at Georgia Tech, where he's doing a master's in data analytics. He's a super nerd, and he does incredible things with data visualization. So that is the story of Shea. I'm just going to ask really quickly, whoever is not muted, please mute. Most of you look muted. I'll look around. But with that, I'm going to give the screen to the pros. So here we go. All right, Mimi, take it away.
Oh, Shea, can you share your screen?
Oh, Shea's going to do the whole screen. That's next level.
Yeah, he's driving.
That's good. Well, you're his boss, right? So this is fun.
Yeah, thank you for the wonderful introduction, Ryan. And thank you all for being here. I'm super excited to be presenting on how, and we say PadSplit, but it's actually Shea, how PadSplit simplified billing and saved its team 350 hours per month. Let's get started. I'll be talking about what PadSplit is and the business problem we had before I hand it over to Shea, who worked on actually solving the problem. Next slide. What is PadSplit? PadSplit was founded in 2017 and is the country's largest shared housing marketplace that provides housing specifically designed for the workforce. We're a marketplace platform similar to Airbnb and Uber, where property owners list their homes and people who need housing come and book rooms. Our tenants are typically hourly wage workers who earn an income of $35,000 or less per year. To the right of the slide, you'll see the cities PadSplit is operating in currently. Next slide. We all know that there are two major problems in the housing market today, and they affect low-income households the most. Lack of housing supply drives costs up, and due to that, renters bear the brunt, creating a lack of access. Next slide. PadSplit is built on the insight that the square footage to solve this problem already exists. On the left graph, you can see that the average square footage for single-family homes increased by 900 square feet between 1980 and 2020. Simultaneously, the average household size, as illustrated on the graph on the right, decreased by 0.3 people. The other insight we have is that a one-size-fits-all shouldn't be the approach when providing access to housing. What do we mean by access? Think about when you're renting an apartment. Most apartments ask for an application fee, a security deposit, and an admin fee, if you're lucky. It's also common practice to ask for first and last month's rent. There's a hefty cost in just moving into a new place. Not only that, most homes typically ask for a 12-month lease and a minimum credit score. This all creates a lack of access to housing for low-income individuals. PadSplit creates both supply and access for low-income workers by connecting existing supply with demand and changing the barrier to entry. As a result, while it takes more than $200,000 to create affordable housing to house one person, PadSplit can house almost 75 people for the same cost. How do we do it? We do it via our digital platform that allows tenants, whom we call members, to find affordably priced rooms and make it easy for them to qualify and pay. Simultaneously, our digital platform allows landlords, whom we call hosts, to fill their homes by the room with pre-screened members. We also take care of the headache of payment collection and provide hosting tools. Because PadSplit is both a technology and an operations company, when we build our digital product, we build for members, hosts, and internal PadSplit admins. Now let's get into the design challenges we had to solve. Next slide. Our internal admins, the customer experience team, processes a high volume of tickets from our members and hosts. Because we deal with co-living, you can imagine that there are a lot of tickets. Among tickets that come from members, 23% are payment related. The payment ticket resolution time, however, was at 34.9 hours. This not only led to higher admin costs and lower customer satisfaction, it was also a serious blocker for future monetization features. Why was this happening? Tickets were being logged by members because our member financial UI was confusing. On the right side, you'll see our former member-facing financial display. The design was based on how the system worked rather than how people process information. Some common complaints were that members thought they were being overcharged, they didn't understand how their payments were being applied to their running balance, and so forth. The problem was compounded by, you guessed it, our admin-facing financials also being confusing. We scaled up the image for presentation purposes, but the financials were actually crammed into 1/3 of the screen, and we had made some improvements, but it turned out to be too much information that was nested. This was not only creating confusions for admins, but product managers and engineers were constantly being pulled in to answer finance-related questions. So much so that we actually created a Slack channel for it. Given these problems, Shea was tasked to fix financial readability for admins, members, and hosts so that we could drive down costs, increase customer satisfaction, and set ourselves up for future success. So that concludes my section, but before we move on, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so just anybody have basic questions about PadSplit and what they were trying to solve? how they operate, how long they've been in the business, any deep or shallow questions. We'll take them all.
Oh, quite proud. I didn't get the tier 1 and tier 2. Got it. Yeah, those are how we separate our customer success team or experience team. So we have tier 1 agents, tier 2 agents, and then payment agents. Tier 1 are typically what we call one-touch tickets, meaning that there's a simple reply to it, and then it gets resolved in one reply. Tier 2 means that it's more involved and there's some back and forth required between the person who has locked the ticket and one of our agents. And then payments is self-explanatory. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan Coleman asked, what led you to think behavioral design could help with these problems?
Oh, Shea is definitely our biggest behavioral design champion. And he had done a lot of, when you work at a startup and speed is king, I actually took out some of these slides. When speed is king, releasing is your #1 priority. Shea took behavioral courses at Irrational Labs during this time and became a champion for behavioral design. And so he was the one who actually proposed it and came to us, and we knew he was the person who could deliver on this.
Oh, and deliver, well, I don't want to spoil the ending of the movie, but he delivered. He definitely delivered. Sean has another quick question. This is, who is your current banking partner, if you're allowed to share, and did they provide friction? This is your opportunity to blame the bank. It's lovely.
When you say banking partner, do you mean payment processor?
Sean, you want to clarify that?
Yes, or banking as a service provider. I don't know how you guys operate.
Oh, okay. We don't have a banking partner. We have a payment processor. We built our own internal financial system though. He's actually here, Sublet, super genius. Shout out to Sublet right now. We use Stripe as our payment processor primarily, and then earlier this year we switched over to Checkout.
These are great questions. We have another one, but my Zoom screen just whisked it away. Sean, yes. Okay, Catherine, you want to just ask your question live? Catherine, you're in Ann Arbor, right?
I am, yes. I have some background noise. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no, you sound great. Go ahead.
I just could you clarify what you were saying about, you had feedback that customers thought they were being overcharged, just sort of like the way the system was set up, there was confusion around that. Can you just provide a little more clarification on that?
Okay. Also, Shea, feel free to jump in if I don't provide the right answer. So the way we were displaying our financials was what we say how the system worked. So kind of complicated. Also, so that jump in as well too, although you're part of the audience. The way we did it is because one payment, like one billing, is attached to what we call an occupancy, and all our occupancies are set up to be paid by the week. And it becomes sort of a running ledger. So if you see the initial design that we had, it was just from top to bottom order of what is being charged. And then if there were penalties involved, late fees involved, it would just layer on top of that. If a member pays though, they might have a specific balance they want to apply their payment towards. Like, I want to knock off my late fees, or I can only afford to pay $45 this week. Can I start doing that, and so forth? And when that payment is applied, the way the system works is it always applies to the first bill that has not been paid. So a member would call us in thinking that they paid $45 to knock off the late fees that they had, the 2 late fees they were charged, but it would actually have been applied to the previous balance. Does this, are you following? I feel like I'm doing a really poor job of explaining. Yeah, but and the line item would show that a payment has been applied, but that the fine hadn't been knocked out, and it didn't show which balance it had been applied to. It just showed the total balance. And so that's what we mean by confusion. There is a lot of edge cases when it comes to billing and paying your bills. And the lack of clarity, I think, even if we told them, hey, the overall balance is correct, the lack of clarity of which payment was applied to which balance was creating a lot of confusion.
I think, Mimi, you get a pass though, because it would, of course, it would be confusing to explain it because it was confusing for the user. And that's really the bottom line, right? That it was just, they really struggled to read and understand the bills, right? So with that, you brought in, he probably came in on a white horse. Shea had some ideas. So shall we pass it over to Shea?
Yep, I just unmounted from the white horse, so I think we're good to go.
Yeah, you should have had the coconuts like in Monty Python's to have the horse sound effects. My bad. All right, man, take it away.
Next time. Awesome. So thank you so much to Mimi, first off, for the wonderful introduction to PadSplit and the design challenge we're trying to solve. So now I can take us into the design process. Right. So for my behavioral mapping exercise, so looking at the behaviors we really wanted to focus on, I did a few different things. So first off, I shadowed the payments team. So just went to many day and night shifts and saw the conversations with members, how they were interacting with the product and the hangups they were running into when they were trying to solve tickets. I also did a qualitative coding exercise for payment related customer support tickets. So what that means is basically I just went through 1,000 tickets very manually and recategorized them. The reason for this is because all payment tickets, or 40% of payment tickets were currently unclassified before. So we were not able to really see granularly what we needed to do to reduce this overall time to solve for payments. And we were able to reduce unclassified to 15% from this exercise and continue that since then. And then finally, just did some research on collections best practices and also had discussions with payments leadership at PadSplit. So this mostly looked like reading on risk metrics and then just chatting with folks about vision, direction, and strategy for the company overall with regards to this feature. So this mapping exercise led to the behavioral diagnosis, two big things that we were trying to get over. So the first thing is that members inquire most often about bills they haven't paid yet. This is something that's fairly intuitive. It holds in both our business and a lot of other businesses. Folks generally want to know about balances that they still owe. And then additionally, we wanted to understand which bills each of their payments were allocated to. So going back to what Mimi said before we had.
Oh, whoever's
sorry.
unmuted, I will try and find them, but please mute.
Great.
And then members want to understand which bills each of their payments were allocated to. Sorry, going back to what Mimi said, basically folks often didn't understand when they made a payment, which bill it actually was attributed to because of the running balance user interface that we had. Awesome. So around the same time I was doing this behavioral mapping diagnosis, I found out about some new research out of the University of Oregon from Dr. Helen Peters. So her new book, Numeracy in the Wild, contains a lot of evidence-based research that has been found to make it easier for people to process numeric information. So a lot of different tests and that she also ran and also some pulled from other psychologists. An ideal aspect of this research is that many of her findings showed gains in understanding across groups of varying mathematical ability. This was very important for our use case for a couple of reasons. First off, the United States generally ranks low globally in mathematics education, so this tends to be a problem across just all users in the country, essentially. And then our member user base tends to skew worse than average on this. So tools that help people regardless of their ability to manipulate numeric information was particularly important for our use case. So a couple of words about the methodology. Sadly, we could not test the new designs that we used. This was mostly due to the startup needing to release quickly. So we were releasing an internal screen as well as 2 end user screens. So just needed to move very quickly. But business constraints and release deadlines. So I'm going to show the updates to the ad member financials. And those were released 6 weeks ago. So we'll be able to show an introductory trend with that data. I'll get more into that later. Cool. So without further ado, I'd love to present the new screens that we developed. So we do have 3 end users. So our members, folks that are living in the home, hosts who are listing on the property, as well as our internal admins. So we're going to be showing the admin screens only. The host and member were released later, so they were just released within the last couple of weeks. So we don't really have great data there to present, but they're very similar to the admin with a few different use cases. So you'll get a pretty representative view. So this is our first tab. So we basically released two full screen thing with two tabs. Our first tab is the billing history. So you can see all outstanding bills on the top, fully paid bills collapsed on the bottom. And then to the right is our payment history, which just shows all payments in reverse chronological order. And I'm going to get into a lot more detail on the screens while I go over with you 7 behavioral insights about numeracy that I picked up from this book and that guided our team when developing this feature. First, we'll talk about showing the most relevant information first. Awesome. So Dr. Peters found that ordering information generally helps consumers draw their attention to the most important information and then reduce the cognitive load for finding that information. That tends to be pretty true across web design and has been definitely already a noted phenomenon, but I think it's particularly the case with numeric information. And then one interesting study that Dr. Peters ran found that when she did an experiment and ordered health plans primarily by performance, and then had a control where they were completely unordered, that resulted in choices of higher performing plans compared with presenting the information unordered. It just kind of shows that if the folks making the product or operational procedure are really focused on the ordering, it can really help the user experience and help them serve their own best interests. Cool. So going into how we applied that feature, we're showing the most relevant information first. So again, we're showing the outstanding bills as the only uncollapsed item because this is what generally people care about the most. So we really want to draw salience to this information, which is something we weren't not doing before. Additionally, for the payment history, we're showing recent payments in reverse chronological order. So all payments in reverse chronological order. And this has to do with because most folks that are calling in about payments are wondering where a payment was attributed to around recent payments. So we want to make that very clear to folks. All right, moving into heuristic number 2, be prescriptive. All right, so I'd ask you to take a moment, look at these 2 pictures and think what would be most persuasive to you if you were thinking about quitting smoking?
Shea,
You ended up thinking, oh,
Shea,
go for it.
my answer is cookies.
Cookies, fair.
Is that wrong? Is that wrong?
Yeah, that's a good answer, honestly. Reward substitution. Awesome. So we'll stick with the options on the slide, but we'll go with the left one. So if y'all were thinking about the left one, smoking can cause a slow and painful death. You're probably right on the mark there. So in general, Dr. Peters found that being more prescriptive, so telling someone explicitly what a number or a risk actually means, helps people understand what the numeric information is actually saying. And this can narrow down choices for users as well. So if you're thinking about a tiering system, if you wanted to reduce choice to overcome cognitive overload, you could have like a high, medium, low. And then this Marlboro is a great example of an active choice where someone's making an active choice to ignore this warning when buying a carton of cigarettes. All right, as far as be prescriptive in the product, this is a new state of the billing tab that you haven't seen yet. When folks have no outstanding bills, we actually just show this thumbs up, tell them they're all good, and tell them when their next dues are. This is really to let members know they have nothing to worry about and then anchor them, and this is the best state. Sometimes with all the communications we have going out, folks will get confused about their financial standing, even if they're perfectly good standing. So we wanted this to be a comforting source of truth for all members. All right, I will go over 3 and 4 together. So for number 3, whole numbers beat percentages. Gonna do another left versus right exercise. So if y'all want to reflect on which of these would be more persuasive for you to quit smoking, feel free to put in the chat or anything if you want. I'm not moderating it, but I'm sure other people will appreciate it.
Was that like a double dare for me to moderate it? Hold on.
Yeah, you gotta moderate it, right?
Oh, right. Like, come on, Ryan, moderate. Oh, people. Okay, there we go. Less text equals better. Left side, left's easier to understand. Left. It sounds like they all don't get a prize, but they got the right answer, right?
That's correct. They all got the right answer. This is generally going to be a more persuasive way to do it. So in general, people can understand and process information more easily when it's a raw number. So I think this really goes in with cognitive overload, like a lot of these tricks. A study studied in this book found that when information and consequences of risky behaviors were presented as months of life lost or gained, recall was better than when it was presented in terms of disease likelihood. So this exact example essentially showing that recall was better than the one on the left. And then in another experiment that I personally found pretty shocking, Dr. Peters and others found that many participants did not know that 2% of $100 is $2, which is pretty simple percentages, but a lot of folks can't even go that far with percentages. So throwing them even something like more complex than that is ill-advised. But in general, sticking with raw numbers, I think is a good thing. All right, and number 4, which goes closely with that, doing the math for folks is very helpful. And it's been shown to help the less numerate, so people who are less good with numerical processing in a variety of ways, including with credit card debt and healthy eating choices, which I would say are both akin to paying PadSplit rent. It's kind of like an eating your vegetables type of thing, where it's what you need to do, but not necessarily what you want to do. And then another important aspect of doing the math for them is making sure that that math is very applicable to the decision or information that they're trying to understand. So going into a few examples of this in the product, the first is in the billing tab. So we're using whole numbers to show how much someone has paid towards the bill and how much someone has left to pay in this new bill progress column. And then we're also doing the math for them in this sense. So we're showing them how much they've paid and how much is left to pay. So there's no numerical processing that really needs to be done. You just see how much is left to pay in your bill, how much you've paid so far. Also going into the billing line item expanded a bit. So it's collapsed by default. So we're showing the most information first, important information first, going back to number 1. When you uncollapse it, there's this new section called payments towards this bill, which will show any payments that actually were attributed to the bill. So it'll show the amount of the payment and how much was paid towards this bill. So again, another example of using those whole numbers to show the amount of the payment, what was paid towards the bill, and also doing the math for them to understand what parts of the payments actually went towards the bill. And then the corollary, this is on the payment side. So again, if you expand it, we're showing the most important information first by default, but we have this paid towards these bills section for payments. So anytime you make a payment, you'll see which bills those actually went to, the amount of that bill, and how much of that payment specifically went to the bill. Cool. Moving on to number 5, just providing comparisons. All right, this is the last one of these, I promise. Thank you for your hard work in this presentation. But would love to hear in the chat with Ryan monitoring. What do you think would be scarier to you when trying to take a prescription medication? If you saw the thing on the left or the thing on the right?
Okay, Mark is voting for right. We got right. Everybody's going to right. I think we have a lot of heavy drug users here. That's why, Shea. No, I'm kidding. Oh, Beyonce would. Oh, Amy gets a comedy point. She said Beyonce would say to the left. That's pretty funny, Amy. All right, Shea, tell them the punchline.
Well, Beyonce was wrong on this one, unfortunately, Amy. So people would generally find the one on the right more scary, a lot of this research. So generally, anchoring people in a concrete, familiar comparison is very helpful in highlighting importance and also reducing someone's cognitive load or processing time. You might know this from an irrational labs bootcamp as making it relative, pretty much the same context here, or same concept. And a great example of this is getting people to take medications to manage long-term conditions. So there was a experiment done with basically these conditions, and then the folks on the right, 50% of people were thinking about not taking the meds due to side effects, the group on the left that had a little more context, so anchored in numerical grounding, only 30% of folks said they would consider not taking the medication. So huge uplift on adoption there from that simple change. Cool. So we use that fairly subtly here. So in this fully paid bills section, again, collapsed by default. When you uncollapse it, we show this fully paid bar for every single line item. We're really trying to do this to anchor folks into a fully paid bill being a good thing and something that they want to aim for. So it shows really like what good is within the platform, and hopefully it will improve behavior is the hypothesis of payments. All right, number 6 is using icon arrays. So recent research indicates that icon arrays, which are these apples filled into the left or to the left of the slide, for instance, regardless of numerical ability, is very impactful for folks and is concrete to them, going back to Irrational Labs lingo. Whereas comprehension and risk perceptions with other types of visualization, such as line and bar graphs, depend a lot more on numeracy levels. So if you're trying to drive a point home visually for any type of user, research would suggest icon arrays are probably your safest way to go. So we see this in the billing tab here with the bill progress information, in addition to showing, doing the math for them. So showing how much was paid, how much is left to pay. We also show this visual bar to try to really drive the point home. Finally, number 7, we're going to talk about making numeric information visually salient. So oftentimes users don't understand numeric information because they never actually looked at it in the first place. From research, it seems this neglect may be particularly prevalent among less numeric consumers or folks that are less good with numerical processing. So the visual importance of numeric information is super important here to make sure people actually look at it. And this can be manipulated in a few ways, including through larger, bolder, and more salient fonts, and then color differentials as well. It's a really good one. So a couple of good examples from some financial apps here. They tend to do a fairly good job of this. Cool. So going to our example in this, we did make all of the numeric information a different font size and color than the surrounding information. This was somewhat emphasized before, but we made sure to make it even clearer for this iteration.
I just noticed, Shea, that Mr. Bean is renting out a PadSplit. That's great.
He is, yeah, he loves it. Our highest MPS. Cool. So that was the 7 behavioral insights about numeracy. I'll leave these on the screen for a little bit longer just to get the final absorption in for our brains. Cool. And then just wanted to show one last time the before and after, again, for our admin screens only. So before, this is crammed ledger, a lot of information, a lot of nested information. Now, I hope like a little more zen, peaceful to look at the very least. That's what we were going for. So yeah.
This is good, Shea, especially if we were doing a makeover show.
Yeah.
You know,
I should start an HGTV show.
Yeah, one day when you're older. So the payoff. Do we get to see the big climax? Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah, we do. Let's go into results. What everyone's really interested in. Cool. So as far as usage, so this is for the admin screens only. We're getting about 35 opens per week. So on these different member profiles, and about 12 users per week. This is more of a barrier metric, just to make sure people are actually using it. People aren't like completely ignoring it. This is generally on track with what we would expect given our ticket volume staff. All right, now let's talk about the trend line. So using this 4-week moving average, we're originally at a baseline of 3.25 hours per ticket when we started. So we did that baseline, like an 8-week rolling average from April to May of this past year. So we've been tracking since July. It was generally hovering around 3.25 and a lot of noise. And then we do see a decline after this feature release, which is this pink line. I'll walk us around the graph a little bit. So on the top, you can see the number of staff that were on at each time. So we lost a couple of members of our staff from July to early August. and then gained 2 back September 5th, so right before the September 12th feature release. And then additionally, you can see our member counts on the bottom. So you can see we've grown about 600 members from July to early October, just as a reference to see our growth and kind of the efficiency that we're driving here. And then you can see time to solve on this y-axis. Oh, final thing, sorry. For this process improvement introduced on the right, this was a small enhancement made to our payment scheme where shifts were basically scheduled in a better way. And we hypothesized this may have had an impact on time to solve declining as well. So for takeaways, even without a randomized controlled test, which again would have been ideal, but we didn't have the bandwidth for here, we did see average time to solve for payment help tickets drop from our baseline of 3.25 hours per ticket to 2.1 hours per ticket on the week of October 17th, the last week. And overall, this was a 35% reduction. So again, there could be a ton of things that controlled this, including team member switches, trend seasonality that's not incorporated. We haven't seen any, but potential, obviously like random noise or variation, process changes, etc. So we'll never really know for a fact as much as an experiment with the spin impact. But due to the pretty sudden turnaround after, we can at least have a fairly strong hypothesis that it likely had at least some impact. And then going off of that, incorporating behavioral principles wherever you can, even if you don't have the time for this test, can help you have more cogent hypotheses for why things happen, and then also build product features that delight users and deliver on business outcomes. So I feel like fairly confident that we have a hypothesis here that we can work with and we can validate more in the future.
Shea, you need to know in the chat, since you know you're asking me to moderate, people are saying things like, wow, exclamation point, yay you, exclamation point, incredible, exclamation point. I just thought you'd enjoy that.
Thank you, definitely.
But I also wanted to add that Kristen and our team at Irrational Labs sometimes call these just do. Like, you want to test things as much as possible so you can, find out the actual causation as opposed to correlation. That said, sometimes there are things that you just do. Like, there's enough compelling science to just remove those 3 screens from the workflow, without testing them. So in a lot of ways, you were just doing because you're at startup pace, and you certainly saw a strong correlation, right? Oh, Kristen just said, Shea, give this guy a raise, exclamation point. Mimi, wink, wink. All right, so carry on, Shea, sorry.
Awesome. Down for the raise, obviously. So questions for the discussion, just to end this off here. Would love to know what questions still come in about member finances now that these new screens were released. I think the qualitative insights that come from just talking to users is super important for understanding the types of problems we have, and then can validate those later. Would also be really curious to see what PadSplit admins still struggle to explain to members and hosts about member finances. I'm sure things will still come up. There'll probably be a new set of challenges that we can explore. Additionally, tying back to the 3 Bs framework, we focus a lot on the second B, barriers, so trying to reduce cognitive barriers to using the screens. We didn't really take a look at all at benefits, or at least I didn't. So that could be an interesting thing to look at, trying to add immediate, concrete, and/or emotional benefits to using these screens, and not calling customer support. And then overall, now that we've taken these finances and done the just do it stuff, as Ryan just said, I would love to know what experiments we could run to continue to improve the utility of these screens and get a little more solid backing behind our hypotheses.
So Shea and Mimi, thank you so much. This was excellent, and we're on perfect time to do a lot of Q&A. I hope the 2 of you are ready. There is quite the backlog. So I do have everybody listed who dropped, I think everybody who dropped a question in the chat. So I'm going to call on you, but you can also raise your hand just for the sake of keeping things flowing. My question order right now is Amy in the UK, my man Dan Coleman, Rick Leander, Mark Lush, Dr. Moira Summers, Nikita, and then Adam, who's down the road from me in Chicagoland. So Amy, you want to bat lead off?
Yeah, no problems. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Trey. I am just curious. So I work in the public sector, and so in the UK public sector, any digital provision must comply with design guidance that is actually set and approved by the government, so that it's made sure it's accessible, equitable, etc. to the public. I'm curious whether you have digital standards defined by the regulators, so either private renting or some financial regulator, or like within your setting that is relevant to this work. And if not, why do you think there's no such regulation in place? Cheers.
Well, that was a super compound question for you, Shea Mimi. Who's taking that one?
I can take my best stab at it. And Shea, you can join in. Yeah. So as far as our knowledge, I don't think there is any digital provisions per sector. The only digital provisions I do know of is sort of more related to physical accessibility. So like within screens, it's like font size, color contrast, and so forth. So that's my knowledge, and anyone in the audience correct me if I'm wrong, because then now we have to start complying. That's my knowledge. Why do I think that we don't have any, whereas in the United States doesn't have any? The same reason why everything technology right now is in uproar regarding social media and data tracking, because our Congress and our leadership moves slowly, and they are mostly not a knock on elderly people. We are all here because of them, but because I think their understanding of digital might be a little bit limited. Like the private sector, digital is moving a lot quicker than law, which is slower in the first place.
Awesome. On to our second person, Dan. I know you had a lot of comments and questions, so I'm just going to give you the floor to share some genius.
I was really just impressed by the genius. It was really exciting, Shea. Thanks so much. It was a thrill. And so I'll ask a quick question kind of off that, which is, it feels listening to you that this stuff comes naturally to you. Like it just makes a lot of sense. And like, I would bet you were eager to go into it. That's how it feels. I'm wondering, I guess the A would be, is that true? Or was there a part that was hard for you? But if it wasn't true, did it feel like for other people you were working with, did you have any insight into like what made this kind of different problem solving hard for them? Like what they had to let go of about the old platform design, what got in the way of shifting to a behavioral mindset? That's my question.
Thanks so much, Dan. It's really nice to hear from you. With regards from the first part of the question, I guess this stuff comes like fairly naturally to me. I don't think behavioral economics is that natural to anyone. It's simply been like a lot of trial and error in practice. And I've been like very interested in applied behavioral science since luckily I got to collaborate with Kristen on some experiments a couple of years ago at this point. So I would definitely say it's been a long learning curve, particularly with regards to like, I think just building product is really difficult in general. So just knowing like how like ideas of research actually translate into designs and UI that's reasonable for the engineering team to build. It's all just like, yeah, pretty difficult. I don't know, I have a hard time with it at least. As far as the secondary component of like persuading folks to use behavioral science, I think it definitely helped having some earlier behavioral experiments before this that showed really good results. I think like in general, if you can show results that are very applied to your organization, that tends to build trust. And secondly, I would say with this particular project, I think people were just like pretty unhappy with the past screens. So I would say like there wasn't as much like endowment effect or anything going on there, or status quo bias, just because people were really ready for a change. So I was very lucky in that regard.
That's super insightful. And I think Shea also, you know, I loved on your final screen, like, yeah, we started tackling the barriers. Let's talk about benefits. I mean, there's so much more you can play with, which I think is exciting. And Dan, for you, I love the way that you said you enjoyed Shea's talk, just like you were a Top Gun Maverick or something. Like, yeah, USA #1, great talk. I love that, Dan. That's why you're a friend of IL forever. Oh, you're not going to unmute on that?
OIL, rah, rah.
I know, I was waiting for the payoff there. That was painful. Thank you, Dan. Okay, cool. Next question to Rick Leander. Bring it.
Yeah, just a point of clarification first. The screens that you showed, they're available for both the internal staff and your clients. Is that correct? Your members?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the screens I just showed are just for internal. However, we released very similar screens to the property owners as well as our co-living members. There's like some slight design differences basically. But yeah, we released them all in pretty quick succession within like a 4 or 5 week period.
Got it. So the question is, what happened to the call volume that your customer experience team received? We did a similar kind of overhaul in a financial services application. And what we experienced was that the number of calls our customer experience or our customer service people saw went down dramatically, but the average time went up significantly because they were left with only the trickiest problems to deal with.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I honestly can't speak to ticket volume yet. Like I could to like very early data, but since it's only been released about 2 weeks, I probably like can't give too many insights as far as any like good trend data. Anything I would feel like comfortable saying is knowledge worth knowing, I guess. Yeah.
I think what the real ask is like, can we get a sequel in 8 months? You know, like Kim and Shea Part 2, you know, destroying the universe or whatever we're going to call this incredible sequel. Spielberg will direct. I will be taken away, and Spielberg will come in. The next question actually comes from Mark Lush, who's here in Chicagoland. So Mark wanted me to ask the team. Let me make sure I see this. For the design intervention, did you experiment with any smiley faces or badges to motivate consistently paying? Which I think goes to the benefit thing, like another phase of interventions, perhaps. But carry on.
Mimi, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there was like a kind of like savings incentives program at the very beginning of PadSplit that was before my time. I'm not super sure. In general, a lot of the, I'd say like payment stuff has been more about reducing friction within the product and making it easier to pay. There hasn't been that much with gamification or creating those types of benefits. I think it'd be a really interesting thing to experiment with. We've talked about it a lot. It's just never quite landed on the roadmap.
Very cool. I had that moment where I was briefly muted. Dr. Moira Summers, up in Canada, how are you? And the mic is yours.
Hi there. I'm good. Thank you. Yeah, I was just aware of the low levels of financial literacy in most of the Western world, and aware that even things like current payment is kind of a high level of language that isn't necessary, right? You could just say, you owe, or this is what you need to pay. And I just wondered if that was a possibility to add to the wonderful work of the book that you cited with Ellen Peters, that there are ways to sort of add words to the numbers that kind of accelerate the understanding.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant and makes a ton of sense. I'm actually not leading the future iterations of this feature, so I can't specifically speak to it, but I know that there's interested experimentation going forward, and I think that's a great experiment idea. We'll definitely pass it on to the product manager running that.
Moira's always good for crazy ideas, so or really simple ones. So thank you, Moira. That's awesome. Next to Nikita. What is your question? Uh-oh. This is the moment where Nikita might not be here. Let's see. Oh, I don't see a Nikita at a scan. So then we'll jump to Adam, our frequent flyer, also in Chicagoland. Adam, floor is yours.
Hey, great presentation, guys. I'm really interested to learn about the product and neat experiment. I guess the thing that I was wondering about was just pretty simple, but I was wondering if you guys looked at the sort of intangible benefits or the experience benefits that might have come as a result of this. I mean, we're seeing it looks like the you talked about the volume of calls, right? So that's one measure of customer satisfaction, but I'm wondering how it feels to use the product now compared to before. If you guys have any sort of insight or way to kind of measure that because I think that ultimately that's going to be a big contributor to stickiness on the platform, right? Is whether you enjoy being on the platform and if it makes you feel more comfortable than others.
Yeah, that's a great question. We generally, since we're still like fairly small, do like interviews or surveys after important feature releases, which I think will likely happen with this. We normally don't get to like stats sig or anything, just like get a general indicator. But yeah, in general, we're very focused on customer satisfaction. A lot of the satisfaction we're trying to drive is specifically within the home. So that's like a lot of what we focus on outside of the platform, which has to do with the platform as well, but like encouraging cleanliness, encouraging members to work out disputes. And then payments would be like after that, but kind of like significantly after, we've noticed, as far as problems with the overall experience.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, very cool. So we have 5 minutes left. So if anybody has a big, deep, profound, earth-shattering, mind-blowing, hair-growing question, because I'd like to grow some more hair, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, we will give people their 4 minutes back to go have a wild adventure or a wonderful lunch. Oh, there it is. Amy in the UK with the Beyonce joke and the hand raise. What's
also,
up, Amy?
it's like evening here, so I'm very invested in this here. It's
Well,
after
Amy,
work, so
have a cup of tea. You should have a cup of tea.
there you go. All done, darling. Now, I have one question which is quite pertinent and very selfish, because it's something to question or well, what would you say to the people, specifically the designers and researchers on your team, who are questioning the just do, and who are saying, oh, but we know, but we need to like look at go away. We need to go away for 2 weeks and look at the stuff. This is a very live and honest thing that I'm grappling with right now. And would you have some recommendations how to unhook them from this sort of reflex?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely want Mimi's advice after this, because she'll give probably way better information here than me. I can speak to our company culture. Our company culture is very focused on releasing and iterating quickly. So that definitely helps like overall. It wasn't like too much of a push on my end. Yeah, one thing I'll say, I guess, is that like I've noticed like flexibility is good in certain things. So, like I always liked allowing designers on my team to go off and like do side quests on the design system or things like that. At least for like certain points of the quarter where there were less things going on. And then I think highlighting like the salience of like business importance with deadlines is pretty helpful. So just like, I think just justifying why you would want to release something in a certain amount of time. But I would love to hear Mimi's follow up there.
I think recently we've been having this talk, like, believe it or not, my background is in design, like UI UX design after architecture, and adjusting to our startup life was very different. We cut all research out because we needed to release and iterate. And releasing and iterating is actually one of the best ways to figure out whether your design is working or not. And at a startup, the turnaround becomes pretty quick. You instantly know, and the turnaround becomes pretty quick. So we built that into the feature. As we're maturing, what we're discovering is it really depends on the end user. So what the screens that Shea showed were and internal admin screens, and we didn't solve it until it actually became a really big business problem for us. But we're actually going through this right now. We're redesigning a lot of our host components, and releasing new features. The primary product manager working on it actually joined us. Her name is Ginny, and Ginny has been amazing throughout this process. But what she's been really amazing and firm at is making sure the research is there and releasing more with pilot programs, A/B testing, and being a lot more intentional about it. And there's been a lot of pressure for her to release more quickly. And her pushback has been, we will lose our trust with hosts with unfinished designs. Like the method that works in a weird way for our members and our internal admins will not work for our hosts. And so I think the end user who is losing it, what kind of relationship you have with them kind of determines that process as well too, as long as the maturity stage of the company.
Thank you, folks. Thanks.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's always a spectrum, right? And we talked last week's membership event was about in-product versus out-of-product testing. I think, analysis paralysis is real, and action bias to the detriment of the universe is real as well. So I think those are both extremes on this continuum, and obviously finding that sweet spot in the middle is magic. But the bigger the organization you're with, the harder the game is. So, with that, first of all, thank you again. Let's all give emojis and love and exclamation points to Mimi and Shea and the whole PadSplit team. I know they have some conscientious supporters up in the mix today. So it's very cool to see inside a startup and see some of the plumbing and the brilliant thinking that's going into your work. So we really appreciate your time, energy, and magical behavioral design mojo. I did upgrade my Mac to Ventura, so my Google chat is weird, or my Zoom chat is weird. It's not letting me send stuff to everyone. So gratuitous plug, if you just go to irrationallabs.com, if you haven't rocked our finance course, come on and take it. Padsplit.com, check it out, rent out your room if you're in one of their target markets. You can reach Shea and Mimi on the interwebs and the LinkedIns if you have additional questions. And just in general, thanks for hanging out on Friday afternoon, evening, morning, wherever it is, wherever you are. It's brilliant to see some of the regulars, and we hope that you'll come back for next month's event and the membership stuff. So any closing thoughts, Mimi or Shea?
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah, thank you for joining and listening to us.
I do just want to say that, oh wait, he was under you. Matt had the most black background I've ever seen. It was kind of incredible. It looked like he was an animation, but then he vanished. So at any rate, awesome. Thank you, everybody. We're going to officially end the recording here.